What if you could drive into a town where the 1960s never actually ended? Not a museum, not a movie set, a real place where the soda fountain still works, the movie theater changes its marquee by hand, and the cafe owner knows your order because she knew your grandfather's. While big cities keep tearing down their history to build condos, some Canadian towns simply didn't. They weren't modernized, redesigned, or rebranded. They were bypassed, forgotten, or just too stubborn to change. And somehow, they're still alive. These aren't ghost towns. They're functioning communities where people still do business with handshakes, where the hardware store has been run by the same family for 70 years, and where the nearest McDonald's might be an hour away, proudly. Today, we're exploring 12 Canadian towns where time hit pause and nobody bothered to hit play again. Some were preserved by isolation, some by collapse, some by pure accident, but all of them feel like stepping into a photograph from your grandparents' attic. Like the video so the algorithm thinks I'm doing something important. Subscribe, because if modern life ever gets too loud or too expensive, one of these towns might be your emergency exit. And trust me, by the end of this list, you'll either be planning a road trip or wondering how these places still exist at all. Number 12. Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. The town the 1960s forgot. Maple Creek feels like a Western movie set that never heard about the 21st century. Population just over 2,000, wooden boardwalks, a 1900 hotel still renting rooms, and a 1938 theater where someone still climbs a ladder to change the marquee letters by hand. Why it froze in time? The Trans-Canada Highway, Highway 1, runs directly through Maple Creek. No through traffic equals no pressure to modernize. Locals chose heritage over convenience. The nearest McDonald's is an hour away, and they brag about that. You gain community, safety, and a lifestyle city people pay thousands to imitate at wellness retreats. You lose career options, specialists, and a dating pool larger than a small wedding. Maple Creek isn't pretending to be the past, it just never stopped being itself. If Maple Creek feels like the 1960s never ended, wait until you see the town where even the sky still sounds like World War II. Number 11. Nanton, Alberta, the antique capital that refused to modernize. Nanton sits on one of the busiest highways in Western Canada and still looks like 1965. Antique shops line the main street, grain elevators still stand tall, and the Aula Hotel hasn't changed much since 1903. And then there's the Lancaster Bomber, one of only 2 airworthy Lancasters in the world. On summer weekends, it flies low over town, shaking windows and your sense of what century you're in. Why Nanton stayed preserved? Cheap commercial rent attracted antique dealers. Locals embraced the identity Calgary. Tourists kept the shops alive. Nobody wanted to tear anything down. It's charming, stubborn, and authentic. But its future depends on whether the next generation cares about antiques or just wants Wi-Fi. And if Nanton feels preserved, the next place didn't freeze in time. It was bolted into bedrock. Number 10. Flin Flon, Manitoba. The town bolted into bedrock. Flin Flon doesn't sit on the Canadian shield. It's bolted to it. Houses anchored into granite. Streets twisting around cliffs. Yards made of stone slabs. This is a mining town that never changed because the mine never did. What you gain? Mining wages. Extremely cheap housing. A tight, loyal community. Northern wilderness. What you lose? Access to everything else. Medical specialists, dating options. Winter sanity. Flin Flon didn't freeze in time because it wanted to. It froze because the rock beneath it never moved. Think Flin Flon was unusual? The next town didn't stop in the 1960s, so it stopped in the 1700s. Number 9. Trinity, Newfoundland. A 1700s village still living in the 1700s. Population 169. Heritage buildings, all of them. Trinity is one of the best preserved historic settlements in North America. Houses from the 1700s and 1800s still creak in the same places they did centuries ago. What saved Trinity wasn't fishing. It was theater. Rising Tide Theater turned the entire village into a stage. The Trinity pageant walks audiences through real buildings telling real stories about real people. But the truth is bittersweet. Tourism is seasonal. The year-round economy is tiny. The population is elderly, births are rare. Trinity may one day become a museum with residents, but right now, it's a living time capsule. And if Trinity feels historic, the next town is what happens when the 1960s collide with Star Trek. Number 8. Vulcan, Alberta, the prairie town that accidentally became Star Trek canon. Population 1,917. Half grain farming, half Star Trek. 100% surreal. Vulcan leaned into its name and built a Trekkie visitor center shaped like a spaceship. Businesses have Trekkie names. There's an annual festival called Spock Days. But underneath the sci-fi glitter, Vulcan is a perfectly preserved 1960s prairie town where farmers and Trekkies share the same café. Both confused, both polite. A local farmer summed it up. The Trekkies are fine. They come, they spend money, they leave. The wheat doesn't care what the town is called. If Vulcan felt surreal, the next place is even stranger. A city built for 3,000 people that now serves 665. Number 7. Greenwood, British Columbia. A city built for 3,000. Now serving 665? Canada's smallest city looks exactly like it did in 1910. Brick storefronts, a courthouse, and a post office built for a booming smelter town that collapsed after 20 years. Today, those same buildings serve a population smaller than most apartment complexes. What you gain: mountain quiet, extreme affordability, a preserved chapter of Canadian history. What you lose: job services, nightlife anonymity. Greenwood survives on pensions, remote workers, and sheer stubbornness, which might be the most Canadian thing about it. And if Greenwood feels frozen, the next town didn't just pause, it never recovered from the silver boom that built it. Number 6. Cobalt, Ontario, the silver boom town that never recovered. Cobalt once produced one of the richest silver finds in the world. In 1909, the population hit 8,000. Today, about 1,100. Old banks, mining headframes, and century-old buildings stand like ghosts of prosperity. Locals still find silver fragments in their gardens. That's how unchanged the land is. Cobalt didn't die. It just stopped moving. If Cobalt feels like a ghost of prosperity, the next town shows what happens when a place simply finds its rhythm and never speeds up again. Number 5. Heartland, New Brunswick, the town that found its level and stayed there. Heartland is renowned for the world's longest covered bridge. Everything else: quiet, modest, unchanged. Population around 870. A farming service center that settled into its rhythm a century ago and has never sped up. What you gain: heritage, affordability, quiet. What you lose: career options, amenities, urgency. Heartland proves not every preserved town has a dramatic story. Some just stayed small because small worked. And if Heartland feels slow, the next town is so quiet, the land itself feels louder than the people. Number 4. East End, Saskatchewan, last place on the map. Population 527, surrounded by badlands and silence. Home to Scotty the T-Rex fossil and a cafe that hasn't changed since the 60s. Folks around here say, the cattle don't care what year it is, the land doesn't change. Why would the town? East End is for ranchers, writers, paleontology nerds, and extreme introverts. Everyone else will run screaming. If East End feels untouched, the next place didn't just freeze, it chose tradition over time. Number 3. Cardston, Alberta, the town the 1960s never left. Cardston is the kind of place where you step out of your car and instantly wonder if your phone lost signal, or if the entire decade did. Founded by Mormon settlers in 1887, the town didn't modernize. It simply stayed exactly what it was. Dry town, quiet Sundays, original storefronts, and a carriage museum with more than 300 horse-drawn vehicles, because in Cardston, the past isn't curated. It's normal life. Walk down Main Street and you'll see families who've lived here for generations, kids biking without traffic, and a pace of life that feels like someone turned the world's volume knob down to 2. It's peaceful, intentional, and deeply rooted. But the trade-offs are real. No nightlife, a tiny dating pool, and a community where anonymity doesn't exist. Cardston isn't for people chasing excitement. It's for people who want tradition, predictability, and a town that never felt the need to hit update. And if Cardston feels like a preserved chapter of the 1960s, the next place on this list feels even older, not because it froze, but because it never had room to change in the first place. Number 2. Victoria by the Sea, PEI. The village too small to change. Victoria by the Sea is so small you can see the whole village without moving your feet. Population around 100. A theater, a chocolate shop, a lighthouse, and a handful of heritage homes that look exactly like they did a century ago. This place didn't resist modernization. It simply never needed it. Too small to redevelop, too charming to abandon, too beloved to touch. It's a living diorama where the biggest daily drama might be whether the tide is in or out. Life here is slow, intimate, and beautifully exposed. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone sees everything. Winters are quiet enough to hear the ice shift in the harbor, and summers feel like a postcard someone forgot to take down. Victoria by the Sea isn't frozen in time, it's preserved by scale. A village that stayed tiny because tiny worked. If Victoria by the Sea feels tiny, the final town is something else entirely. A place that froze, collapsed, and then accidentally became cool. Number 1. Cumberland, British Columbia. The town that froze, then accidentally became cool. Cumberland is what happens when a boomtown collapses, and then gets rediscovered decades later. Once a roaring coal town of 4,000, the mines shut down, and the population vanished almost overnight. The buildings stayed, the streets stayed, time stayed. For years, Cumberland was a perfectly preserved shell, too quiet to grow, too stubborn to die. Then the artists arrived, then the mountain bikers, then the coffee shops, vintage stores, and trail builders. Suddenly, the frozen town thawed into one of BC's most unlikely cultural hotspots. Now the challenge isn't survival, it's protecting the soul that made people fall in love with it in the first place. Old miners' houses sit beside craft cafes. Bike racks outnumber parking meters. And the town that once emptied out is now fighting to stay authentic. Cumberland didn't just freeze in time, it rebooted. After visiting these towns, one thing is clear. Time didn't just slow down here, it settled in. Some were preserved by isolation, others by hardship, and some simply never had a reason to change. But they're not frozen or abandoned. They're alive, just on their own terms. Places like these remind us, faster isn't always better, and convenience can't replace community. Maybe it's not for you. Or maybe a slower, quieter world is exactly what you've been missing. Because while everything else races forward, these towns prove the past isn't gone, it's still here. So the only question is, where would you go first?